This is dedicated to all my beautiful queens, all my beautiful ladies out there. She's a queen. Go queen. You got it, girl. She's a queen. You better represent. Go queen. Go queen. Go. She's a queen about her business. Queen. Working hard on a mission. Yeah. Head high, purpose driven. Purpose driven. Crown will never tilted. Queen. Go queen. Go queen. Go queen. Go. Represent. You're a queen. You're a queen. Oh.
So thank you guys for joining another episode of the Q Chat podcast. So today I have a very great guest. I'm really excited to talk to her. Her name is Miss Dacia James, and she's the author of The Game of Life. So we're going to just chop it up. She's a dancer. She's met a lot of famous people. We're just going to chop it up and talk about her book, and she's going to bless us and talk about the taboo subject of waiting. And there's a lot of other good things that we're going to talk about. So I want to go ahead and just give her the floor. So how are you doing today?
No, I'm doing great. The sun is shining here in Atlanta, so I am happy.
Yes.
It's a good day. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
No problem. Hi, Atlanta. Okay. So when I was doing my research on you, I found like a few notable things that stood out. So one of the things that I read was that you bring your high energy creativity to different stages. You brought it to stages like the American Music Awards, the Grammys, Good Morning America, The Late Show with David Letterman, and you're a triple threat with a passion for creating quality entertainment. So I want you to tell everyone, I know like you have roots in dancing. So before we even get to the book, let's talk about your dancing career. How long have you been in that field?
Professionally, since I graduated from college. Once I graduated from college, I moved to Los Angeles to pursue a career in dance, but I've been dancing since the age of probably 8 or 9 years old. I was fortunate enough to be blessed with dance classes. I used to go to my grandmother's job after work, and she worked for this woman named Dr. Drew Copeland. She was the administrative assistant for her. So I would come and just kind of sit there and twiddle my thumbs and kick my feet and wait for my grandmother to get off. And Dr. Drew Copeland was like, I think that you should put Dacia into some dance classes. And my grandmother, being very candid, like, who go pay for it? Who go invest that? Because we don't have it. And Dr. Drew Copeland knew the instructor at Galveston Ballet, because I'm from Galveston, Texas. And so she said, I'm going to pay for them. And Dr. Drew Copeland was the catalyst that started me dancing at a young age. And I'm very fortunate and blessed because, you know, when you are stepping out into, you know, dreams and desires, it's an investment sometimes. Some parents cannot afford, you know, to put their kids into the arts. So I do feel like I've been blessed to do that so that I'm able to do the same for other kids and so into other kids' life that might want to be in the arts and entertainment industry. So that's how I got started.
So now that's how you got started, but I also read that you have a groovalicious swag plus Southern influences. Now, of course, just with the research, you've also been associated with a lot of, you know, notable people. So how did you get to that stage in life with dancing? Something that just simply started with someone noticing you and saying, hey, put her in that training and, you know, let her be a part of the art world. So how did you get to that stage?
I think like a lot of kids, you have a dream of being something great, right? And sometimes that can be suppressed by not your reality, but the reality around you. So, you know, your family members, or in my case, my mom, I said I wanted to be a choreographer. I wanted to be a dancer. And my influences were Janet Jackson at the time, Michael Jackson, you know, back in the day when they had those amazing performances. Aaliyah was another one that I was just so in love and enamored with. Their precision, their poise, their vibrant performances. I mean, literally hands down, they were clearly the dream for me. Like I want to be on that type of stage. But realistically, my mom was like, is that a job? You know, do they get paid? Like, what is that? I think I need for you to think about being a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher. And that's their perception of their reality. And for me, I took the time out to research what it is and how to get to Los Angeles. And I made a deal with my mom. I said that I will go and get my degree. And after I get my degree, I need for you to allow me to go and pursue a dream with the intent that if it doesn't work out for me, that I can always come back home, right? And we shook on it. But I believe my mom thought I was just playing, right? Because when I was actually packing up my car to leave, with my MapQuest in my passenger seat and my Honda Civic filled up to the top, she was like in awe. You know, wait, what you doing, girl? I said, I told you I am leaving. I am going. I don't know where I'm going in Los Angeles, but I am going. And I literally had enough money for about 2 or 3 weeks, you know, and I was like, I'm going to get a job and I'm going to figure this thing out. So fast forward, I did move to Los Angeles. 2 weeks, I ended up getting a job. And I had a friend of mine who told me about this company called Streetlights Production Assistant Program. And this program was a nonprofit program that was geared towards putting people of color into the industry back then, you know, so that we could have more people of color in the industry. And I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna, you know, put everything in the fire. I'm going to start off as a production assistant because I know the end dream for me was to be a director and a producer and a creator, right? I didn't know the steps to get there. I knew that I love to perform and I love to create. And so once I got privy to that information, I applied to that school and I got in out of like 600 people. I was one of the top 10 that got in to the school, and they really groomed me on how to be a production assistant. Now at this time I was still dancing, you know, for fun on the side. And I became a production assistant, but a friend of mine saw me in class dancing and she said, I really think that you need to get a dance agent and really pursue dance, because I know you're behind the scenes with production, but if you have this gifting, you need to like really hop in there. You can really make it. And I think somewhere along the line, I dreamed of being a choreographer in the dance. Like that's always what I wanted to be. But I knew if I was a producer and a director, it seemed a little bit more sane and stable, right? But I took my advice of my friend and I ended up getting an audition for an agent. And she said, Dacia, you're going to get this. I promise you, this agency is going to want you. And I said, well, how much dancers get paid? Like, how much y'all getting paid? And so she told me how much they was getting paid compared to what I was getting as a PA. I was like, girl, I'm about to dance. I'm about to dance. And because it's like reality is here I am lifting, you know, it's a male dominated field, especially black. You're not going to see at that time, not a lot of Black females as well who are in those positions. And so it was kind of heavy, you know, hefty on my body, you know, weighing it down. And so I was like, well, if I can get on stage and I can dance and do what I love to do, and a 16-hour day becomes an 8-hour day with what I absolutely love, then why not shift back into the dream and the idea that I had when I was a kid? And so I'm grateful for that insight from her. So long story short, I'll tell you the amazing part of this story was, I was very green in the industry with not understanding that. And hopefully this blesses somebody who is on here and doesn't really know how to navigate the circumstances. When you get a job, like if a friend tells you about an audition and you go and you get that job, any agency will probably represent you on that job or pick you up as a client because you have a job that they're going to get commission off of. At that time, I thought, well, let me go find an agent first, not let me go get a dance job first, right? So at that same day of that audition, there were 2 auditions happening. There was the audition for the agency and there was the audition for the Grammys for Kanye West and Jamie Foxx for Gold Digger. And so I had already told at that time my assistant director of Dreamgirls, because I was working on Dreamgirls as a production assistant at that time, and he allowed me to miss for the agency audition, but I could not miss for the Grammy audition and the agency audition, but had I known I would have went to the Grammy audition and not the agency audition. But it all worked together for my good because the choreographer of the Grammys wanted to learn how to step for that particular gig. And I'm a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and I knew how to step. So I gave him some steps and he used it for the audition. And so he said, but can you make the audition? I said, I can't. I have an audition this afternoon and they're not going to let me get off for both auditions. Mm-hmm. And he said, okay, well, we'll see what we can do. We'll see if we can just add you in or something like that. So that audition happened as well as the agency audition. And I nailed the agency audition, really killed the choreography, felt good about it, went back to set for Dreamgirls. And I called him that night, the choreographer, and was like, hey, so what happened? Did she say, I can just hop in there with y'all? And she said, no, you had to come and audition. I was like, well, God dang it. At least I helped you. At least I was able to contribute something, an idea or something like that. And I literally gave that thing to God. I was like, well, it was such a great opportunity, God. And those are the things that I call childlike faith, right? We get into this place where it's like, you release it. You like, okay, well, it was a great even being associated with it, moving on. And I got a call the next day from the choreographer and he's like, hey, Dacia, what you doing? Of course, I'm on set working on Dreamgirls. I'm like, I'm working. And he's like, yo, you're booked. I said, booked on what? He said, the Grammys. I was like, get out of here. He was like, she changed her mind. I was like, no, God changed her mind. Like, it was such a moment for me. Like, no, it was God, because I just released it to him. And those are the testaments to all things work together for your good, right? And really get into a place of what's for you is for you, and nothing can alter the destiny that God has on your life. And I did end up, that was my first gig, the Super Bowl of music. I was on stage with Kanye West and Jamie Foxx, and in turn, I definitely got an agency, and that was the budding, long story short, but very long, of my career.
Wow, that gave me chills. You said a whole word. First of all, I don't even know which part I want to start with first, because you said the word. Like, I passed a collection plate. Collection plate. First of all, just knowing your purpose, like you said, having that faith. It's very inspiring, first of all. Yeah. And I feel like that's just a true testament of, number one, hats off to your mom. I know I'm going way back in the story, but hats off to your mom too, that she, said, okay, I'm going to acknowledge the fact that my child has presented a dream. And, as parents, hey, I mean, I have a 20-year-old, so I know how it is when they start telling you certain things, and you're like, whew, like, oh, I want to control this and tell them not to do it, but you can't. So the fact that she gave you that chance, because some people don't have that luxury of someone that really said, even if they were afraid, like, what if this doesn't work for my child, but to still give them that encouragement to say, okay, we'll see how this goes. Even if we got to do a handshake,
yeah,
come back, have you out there starving, so hats off to mama, for that. Yeah. But just the other story, just about your purpose, and just having that faith and believing in yourself, because all this, like you said, all things come together. If you did not believe in yourself, all of that wouldn't have worked for you good. And I just feel like it's just a true testimony of that. Yeah. So,
well, two things on that, to piggyback off of that. Number one, the gracious thing about my mom, which a lot of people don't have, is that she told me, don't ever be afraid to come back home. Like, don't ever be ashamed of coming back home if it doesn't work, for, your good, in terms of, like, you don't see it progressing. I think that sometimes people can go to, Los Angeles or New York, or to the big cities and the big dreams from what we see on TV, and you can get lost in it. You got to really go out and get a plan, right? Because you don't want to be there 30 years in and you still haven't even scratch the surface of what it is that you saw. And although I said, I ain't never coming, you ain't got to worry, sis, I ain't coming back. That was just my personal drive. But to have that in a parent, I think is very much so a very pivotal point, like really to shift your mindset and make it comfortable for you to go and dream, right? And that if you fail, you're failing forward, right? It's not a misstep. It's just realignment, right? Realigning into what it is that you're called to do. The second thing that I will say about that is stepping out on faith requires us to trust in something bigger than us. At that time, I just knew that there was a fire in me that was put in me from a very young age. And I think what starts to dismantle our hope and our dreams is our experiences and the experiences that we see around us, right? It makes it seem like things are no longer possible. That's why I say childlike faith, because children do the most. It's adults that get scared, right? If a child reaches up for something, or I mean, they'll cross the street like not afraid of a car, like untouchable, like, you know. And so what it is as we grow, we get these experiences and we hear these stories, some of them very traumatic, and those become the barriers that limit the bandwidth of us dreaming.
You know, and I talk about this so much on the show, just having that mindset. Stepping out on faith is not an easy thing, you know, because a lot of us can talk a big talk, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, especially dreamers, you know, we can talk a big game and we don't want to, like you said, never let them see you sweat. So we're not going to really broadcast to people that, yeah, I stepped out on this dream, but I don't know how I'm going to eat tomorrow. You know?
Right. I don't know where we're coming from.
Exactly. My lights may be about to get cut off. You know, we're not going to share all of that, you know?
Yeah.
It does take a lot of faith. And just like you said, a childlike faith, and it is true, that faith of a mustard seed, if you really truly believe in yourself, you really can become anything. And that is the beauty of, like you said, I love that terminology, a childlike faith, because children are fearless. You know, children, they, you know, and it's because of, like you said, it's because of life experience. As a child, or at least a healthy, I would hope, a loving child has that spark in them. You know, it's all children dream big, you know, like we want to be the superheroes that we watch on television. We think we can fly. We think we're superhuman. And if only we could, it's the beauty of keeping that spirit in order to become something great. You know, I like to always say greater, you know, just get to greater, just get to that next level. So like I said, that's just extremely inspiring, and mindset is everything. In order to step out, you have to have that mindset that I can do this. Or even that humility, like, okay, even if this doesn't work, I'm still going to try it. Because to me, I always tell people it's much better to just say, hey, I tried it. It didn't work. Instead of years from later, you're wondering, well, what could have been? You know, TV basically has a great video where he's like, you don't want to be laid up on your bedpan one day thinking what I could have done, you know, when it's too late, you know, like, so it's just a beautiful thing whenever anyone, especially comes to this platform and just gives that example, like, hey, you too can just step out on faith. All it takes is a try. You never know what's going to happen.
You miss, what's that say? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? 100% of them. You're gonna miss them if you don't pick up the ball and at least try. So I think that's very important. Absolutely.
Definitely. So I also want to talk about your book, of course. So your book is called The Game of Life. So what made you write the book? What inspired you? And how long ago did you write the book as well?
Okay, so the book came out top of this year. I have been writing this book for about 6 or 7 years. Like I say, to every time there is a season. There were some times where I was flowing and feeling it. And then there were other times where it was very difficult to go back to a place that I was no longer at. You know, just in reading, my book is journalistic. So it comes from those most intimate moments with me and God, really sitting in my room and pondering over the state that I was in. And as you start to develop and mature in your growth, your spiritual growth with God, you'll find yourself thinking about what you used to be, but you don't have the capacity to hold everything that you were unless you read it, right? Because when you read it, you can see where you were in detail. And so I think that's what made the process and the journey a little bit longer than some. We all have a book in us. I do believe that we all have a story. This particular book for me is The Game of Life, Releasing the Weight, WEIGHT, when God says wait, WAIT, because I was in a particular waiting season that became very, very, very heavy. And those weights are things like anger and resentment and entitlement and control, discouragement. Like these are some of the things.
Beautiful queen, all my beautiful ladies out there. She's a queen. Go queen. You got it, girl. She's a queen. You better represent. Go queen. Go queen. Go. She's a queen about her business. Queen. Working hard on a mission.
Like these are some of the things, anxiety. These are some of the weights that I was feeling during a season where my husband and I had been trying to conceive for a while. And as a believer, it can be difficult to step into waiting seasons that feel unexplained, or you have no answer behind, or you feel like you don't have an answer or direction of which way to go. So I started writing in my journal a lot more during that season. I think for sanity, because you have these thoughts in your head. And one day I got just really frustrated with God. And as I was reading back, he said to me, like literally the Holy Spirit, I was sitting in prayer and it's like, you're not the only one that feels like this. I want you to know that this is a book. And I was searching during that time, I was searching for books that would help me cope with what it was that I was going through. But as I was looking for those books and reading those books, every single one of them had a happy ending. Every single one of them. And it's not to shun away from those great moments that happen. I love a happy ending. But when you are still in the thick of a waiting season, it is difficult to see this is happening, but it still isn't happening for me. And I remember God saying, yeah, I want you to write that book for those that are still in the middle. I want you to write that book so that you are still in the wait with them. So when they close that book, they feel comforted in knowing that there is someone still waiting with them. And that wait isn't necessarily infertility, right? That wait could be you're waiting to get married. You're waiting for healing. You're waiting for a breakthrough. You're waiting to walk into your dream job. There's several waiting seasons that we have, although yours might not be the despondency of infertility. We can all literally relate to the one game that we're all playing. No matter what, you're going to play the waiting game at some point in your life, either in the natural or in the spiritual sense. Or both. So what I did with this book was built it from a journalistic mindset and tell my story. But in telling my story, I also wanted to give a devotional so that you are able to release every single weight off of you with a prayer and a word. And it's the game of life, because the game of life used to be one of my favorite games back in the day. I loved this game. So when you go to the devotional section of the book, every single chapter is one of my favorite games: hide and seek, the game of life, Monopoly. So I built those devotionals of all these wonderful games that I used to enjoy, and ended with a prayer to inspire you to release whatever weight you have during your wait.
Wow. So that's another mouthful. I just think waiting, like you said, we all have a cross to bear. And like I mentioned a few episodes ago, it's so knowing when you're going through something, I feel has that maturity to say, hey, okay, I know, like once this is over with, I'm gonna have a good book, or a good show, or a good testimony. I feel like no one has that maturity while you're in the thick of it.
Right.
If that's the case, we all would be like, okay, bring on these problems.
Yeah, invite them in. Come on. Yeah.
Right. But the hearts that we have, just being in this world, it would be nice if we felt that way. But, realistically, no, when we're going through something, it's like, why me? When is this going to end? And it's a struggle. It's to the point that it can really mess with you mentally. Okay. Because it's like,
Absolutely.
why am I dealing with this? And you're right about those waiting periods. We've all gone through it, you know. And I love when you mentioned healing, you know, and just if you're going through a depression or you're going through something traumatic, there is that waiting period of the healing where, okay, when am I going to be able to really look back on something and not be as triggered? You know, when am I look back on this incident and not be as sad over it? You know, when can I get something and even find some level of humor in this?
Right.
You know,
yeah.
That is that period, you know, and it takes strength. It takes, you know, being in tune with your spirit. It takes a level of self-love too, because sometimes we're hard on ourselves too during those waiting periods, and we start blaming ourselves for things that are really out of our control. But once again, that's the arrogance of humans. We think that we control everything. And I feel like sometimes the spirit world makes us go to those waiting periods sometimes to humble us, to remind us like, hey, there is something bigger than you. I mean, look at last year. I think everybody
shut us all down. Okay.
Everyone was humbled, no matter what your social economic status was. It did not matter. Like we all were in the same boat together.
Yeah.
So just to go back to what you mentioned, you know, about what you wrote. And I used to love life too as a kid. I used to get mad when I would skip over, like if I had like the number and I couldn't stop that to like have a kid thing. Like I would get so upset. And I remember my siblings were like, let's let her do it because now she's getting mad.
Yeah, just put the little peg in the back seat of her car. Like I would get peg in there.
You know, so I would get super upset. But
right. The funny thing about that is that, you know, I talk about in the book, and back in the day when you playing that particular game, if it don't work out, you can literally like start over. You can like throw it. But we are in this avatar of life that we don't get that option. We just don't. You know, you got to deal. You got to deal. And that dealing requires maturity. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like we literally are living the game of life.
Literally. Like whoever made that genius.
Right. But we're living like Jordan Peele's version of it. Just like, this isn't as cute as the game, you know, or we can spin or we can put it in a box.
God. That is a very good analogy. Very good analogy.
This is a distorted version of it, for sure.
Very good. I concur, my friend. I concur. Absolutely.
But back to the book, and you know, and like I said, I just commend it, and I love how you worded it, is the taboo subject of waiting. You know, because I think it goes back to, and I like to just, with this show, I love to just talk to women in particular who have been through some trials, not because, you know, it's to put on a pity party, but just to show, like you said, that happy ending. It does get better, you know, even if it doesn't seem like it at the time, even if it takes a bit of time, it does get better. Yeah. So how do you relate to other people? Are you in situations where and obviously with the book, obviously you're writing this to inspire other people. What gives you, I guess, the motivation though, too? Because a lot of times, a lot of us may go through stuff and we don't think to maybe put it in a book. But like you said, everyone has a book. Everyone has a testimony. But some people really don't take it to that next level. Okay, well, let me put that in a book to tell someone else, or, you know, let me do a podcast, or let me do a blog. Like some people don't take it to that level. They just deal with it and move on. But what inspires you, you know, because you wrote an excellent book and you're being raw and candid over your fertility issues and everything. What inspires you to even motivate other people? Because you could have said, hey, I'm just going to go through this and leave it at that.
I could have said, get out my business, right? Because this is a very sensitive subject, you know, fertility. It's a very taboo subject in and of itself, outside of just waiting, whatever your waiting season might be. For me, I have always been a teacher. You know, I teach dance, you know, I pull things out of kids and young adults that they might not know that they have. One of the things that I speak on all the time at colleges and at performing arts school is purpose over popularity. So I am constantly drawing things out to make you better. In this case, this particular journey that I was on made me better. It was me saving me from me, if that makes sense. It was, my own self-help book. And I felt like if it could help me, then it's definitely going to help somebody else. But who else felt trapped in this thing that they felt like they couldn't speak about it, or, that there was shame behind it. And I remember that at a couple of years ago, I started to see Gabrielle Union and Chrissy Teigen really be vocal about their fertility journey. And I think women like those empower us to take away the stigma of such, sensitive subjects like infertility. In my case, I always say courage is contagious. If I stand up and I take the platform and say that this has happened to me, that gives you the courage to stand up and say, me too, my friend. I felt like that too. And when I wrote the book, I was floored with all of my friends in and around me, the circles, inner circle, outer circle, people I didn't know, DM me or email me to say, girl, me too. Oh my gosh. And not even from an infertility, perspective. Perspective, just from awaiting and people asking them when they're getting married, when you get married, when y'all having kids, what kind of job you go get after graduation, the pressure, right? Literally the pressure. And so the middle of the book is my favorite because you have to find humor in it. And I wanted a book that would make you laugh while you learn. And so it can be very rude for me to be like, stop asking me when I'm having kids. Okay. We struggling over here. You know what I mean? It can be a little bit rude, but I wanted people to know that their questions are invasive. And I want you to understand that we are now in a new season and a new way of life. People are graduating and still at their parents' house at a much later age. People are getting married later, therefore they're having kids later. It is not business as usual from the 1950s and the 60s, or like my grandmother and them having kids when are getting married at 15 or 16 years old and having kids. We're just not there. And so the rules of engagement of that book also help me speak not only for me but for other people, a way of saying, please learn how to be conscious conversationalists, so that you get the clue. If you ask me a question like, you guys have kids yet? Not yet. That right there, if I didn't give you any more information, that means stop asking questions. Right. Just stop asking questions. Oh, you still with such and such? When y'all get married? If they're like, yeah, we're still together, and it's short, that's a clue. Get the clue, So I wrote that, catch the clue, right? And so I wrote the rules of engagement, which is really funny. It's based upon just situations that have happened while we cracking crawfish, those weird questions that come up, like, why you go ask me, in front of the whole family? And I popped off. And it only took that one pop off for people to learn, right? Like, yeah, that's an invasive question, and now is not the time, And so I felt like I spoke and gave a voice to people that feel the same way, but would never say it. But I would totally say it. Like, I would totally say it. Catch me on the wrong day, and you're going to get a very candid, actually, we had a miscarriage yesterday. What else do you want to know? Like, I would be that candid with you if you caught me on the wrong day. And I want people to feel comfortable. Like, don't feel like you have to hold back or hold it in. No, if it's invasive, figure out a way to let them know, yeah, I'm not going to answer that question at this moment. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? So yeah, courage is contagious. So there's some people I'm like, if you don't know how to deal with those people, buy my book, and then just put the bookmark right into the rules of engagement and say, start here. You don't even have to go read her story. Just start at the rules of engagement.
I mean, you said a lot, because I think it's the thing with Black families, obviously, like we all have that set of relatives. They got a few years on them, and they pretty much have the license to say whatever, whether it hurts feelings. It's like, really? And I just think too, the Southerners, the way we're brought up, you're not supposed to speak up, but I feel like a lot of us are getting empowered where it's like, okay, right, respect really doesn't have an age on it, like what you're not going to do. you know, it is like not really to be disrespectful, but I just feel like a lot of us are taking that power back, you know, where it's like, okay, here's what we're going to talk about. Here's what we're not going to do. You are not going to disrespect me. Now, mind you, not everyone's at that stage yet. And for some of us, like myself, who have gotten there, it has taken therapy and other good things.
I'm with you. Yeah.
Right. Because God knows it took some professional help for me to get to that stage where I'm like, I need to put those boundaries, you know, for my own mental health, you know, and my own salvation. Like, hey, like you know, you have a right, I have a right to say this is not okay. Like, you shouldn't ask me certain things, or if you want to address certain things, there's a way that you can go about it, and there's a way that's not appropriate.
That's the word, boundaries. You hit a nail on the head. And my therapist did a great job of breaking it down for me. And she said, control the things that you can control. That's it. Control the things that you can. If that means you're not going to a baby shower this week, it's okay. If that means that, you know, you're not going to a wedding this week because of the way it's okay. And control the things. Because she said what you can't control is going into the store and seeing, which happened in real life right after a miscarriage, right? Seeing a 16 to 18-year-old get a pregnancy test, right? You can't control that. So control what you can control. And that keeps you sane in a sense, because we as human beings try to control everything. And then to me, I feel like as a believer, sometimes we'll be extra hard on ourselves. Like, we're not displaying love to people if we don't show up for them. And that's not the case. There's something about protecting you and your environment and really your sanity, again, because it is about protecting the thoughts in your head. I believe that it's called the helmet of salvation for a reason, because our thoughts really dictate who and what we are and what we believe and what we can achieve. And so protecting those thoughts. And I want to always be my most authentic self in those situations. And it doesn't mean that I'm not at that time. It doesn't mean that I wasn't happy for someone. It meant that your celebration reminded me of what I didn't have. It's not being jealous of you. It's just, it can be a reminder of what you feel like God has not done for you. And I remember when people used to post things like, I'm so happy God chose me. Oh, that used to deal with my heart. Right? Because like, well, why didn't he choose us? You know? And again, protecting. And I feel like that's a trick of the enemy, because on those days when you are at your lowest, why them be the posts that come up? Like, why be them posts at the top? And I believe that because we're more susceptible to them, and it can take us, you know, down the rabbit hole. Be authentic to yourself. There's a way to feel what you're feeling and express how you're feeling in the most authentic way to someone, to where they give you sympathy. They can't empathize with you because they might not be in the same position, but they can sympathize if you feed it correctly, if you feed it with love. Like, I would love to do this, but yeah.
I think that's another beautiful thing about therapy is just, I feel like when you have a therapist, they break down things that, like, it's okay to say no, you know, okay to own your feelings as well. I think that's another thing about a lot of our upbringings, which I feel is like a form of gaslighting with a lot of ways. Some of us were brought up where it's like we weren't allowed to really own our feelings. Or I think one of the negative effects of religion is when we're supposed to just not be sad. Like, we're told like we can't be hurt by something, or if we're upset over something, or if something really hurts us, or if we're really saddened, it means that like we aren't as centered, we're, you know, with our higher power. And it doesn't mean that, you know, like we can believe in God, we can still, you know, have that faith, but it's okay. If we're hurt, you know. And I think that's the toxic religion, I think sometimes, where it's like shoved on, like, well, just pray it away and that's it.
That don't do it all the time.
Right. Like, if you're depressed, there's something wrong with you. Like, there's no reason for you to be depressed. You should have just prayed on it and that's it. You know, and that's just such a terrible way to feel. And that's when sometimes we go into a shell, because then you're even sharing with someone that you may be close with. hey, I'm not dealing with this well, or, this is really hurting me, because then you're like, okay, they're going to say something and make me feel bad for feeling bad,
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a bad will, I think, when you don't end up getting, I feel like if you're truly centered, that's when you realize a lot of things are okay. And that's why I'm a huge proponent of therapy, especially when you're dealing with traumatic situations, because we're not built to deal with everything alone.
Although we think that we can, right? Mm-hmm. We really are not. And I what I love about this generation is that we're changing the narrative for therapy and what its benefits are to our state of mind, which I think is really great, because when I think about my grandmother or my mother, they're not actively in therapy at the moment, but many of us, millennials, on down, we like therapy every other week, and it feels good to like really process some things, or to, if you have a really great therapist, to see how, just your perspective. One aspect of changing your perspective can really change your outlook on progression. Like literally, it can change the way that it can change the way that you move forward. Because we can wallow in stuff, as religious people, we can wallow in some things, and they say deliverance, deliverance, deliverance. And I get that there is an aspect of deliverance, but I do think you will always go back to something that has not been dismantled in the mind. If you haven't found the root of where it is, certain things are built in, or the foundation or the catalyst, like what is stemming you to feel that way. Like I might feel, offended by something. Well, that thing probably really didn't offend me. What happened? And then I'm in therapy like, oh, you know what? When I was 12 years old, that girl said this, and you know what I mean? Like, oh snap, I'm up here 39 talking about when I was 12. But it's real. It's real.
Yeah.
It's real. Yeah.
And it's important what you said, because if you tell someone, okay, so I feel like certain situations, if you haven't had therapy, and I hate to act like I just push it on people, but I just feel it's important. So just like you said, there are some situations where someone will mention something that happened in childhood that hurt them. Oh, well, you should get over that. That's been how many years? That's nails on a chalkboard for me, because I've been in situations like that where it's like, well, that happened how many years? Pain doesn't have an expiration date,
That's good.
And I say that a lot, like pain does not have an expiration date. So like, please don't, try to diminish how this experience was for that upset person. Like, it's unfair. I can go on and on about.
That's good. I'm gonna write that note. You might hear that in my next interview. Pain does not have an expiration date. I got that from Sharonda.
People a lot, and I'm not perfect. It came because good old therapy that I go to regularly.
Right.
To this stage in my life.
Yeah.
At 44 years old, because trust me, you had to talk to me 10 years ago, I would not have said that.
Girl, me either, child.
That I'm still dealing with this stuff, it would have been nothing but self-deprecation, but that does not exist
anymore.
So one thing that I talk a lot on this show that I want to talk about before we end everything is self-love. Self-love to me is extremely important. I feel like self-love really is the fuel to us getting to these stages of clarity. Self-love to me is the fuel for someone like yourself that said, hey, I'm going to take this pain or take this trial that I've experienced and get some purpose through that. I feel like self-love is what just gets us past these humps. And self-love is something I feel that gets us to the point where we can have some peace while we're waiting. Yeah. So what's your take on self-love? And do you find it to be important in like a season of waiting? How do you define dealing with self-love in a season of waiting?
Absolutely. It is so important. I take my self-love moments on a weekly basis. I think that it's important to listen to your body and to your mind. There are things that I will cancel for myself when I know that I have a demanding schedule at times, and if you don't, then it can reflect my atmosphere as a choreographer, as a director. And I am really big on setting my atmosphere. The way that I come in will dictate the way that everybody else comes in. If my atmosphere is one of love and joy, then it'll be the best experience of your life coming into my sessions, which is some of the compliments that I get a lot, is that people really love being in my rehearsals or working with me because I set the atmosphere. But I do think that I take the time to refresh myself and my mind and my thoughts. I will go away, and get a room by myself. This Saturday is my husband and I's 10-year anniversary. And I think what we've come to understand is that sometimes there's greatness and time away from each other. It's not long periods of time, but I'll go away, like even I'll drive to Chattanooga or somewhere 2 hours away and get a hotel for a couple of days and really relax. I think self-love is a very key component to identifying your next steps as well, because it's the place of silence by ourselves. We get to hear those thoughts in that direction from God. At least that's what I choose to. That meditation for me is very important when it comes to loving myself, because in loving myself, I'm able to love you better. I'm able to love my husband better. I'm able to love just people better, because I am in a state of mind of clarity and peace. I always say in these interviews, one of my favorite passages is, all her ways are pleasant ways and her paths are paths of peace. That's Proverbs 20:21. And in that scripture, her is wisdom. And we all know that God is wisdom. And what that scripture is saying is that I follow the ways of peace. Because if it's not peace, then there's no way that God is in it. Chaos, anxiety, that means you got to take a step back. And so what I do is I try to follow my peace at all times. If I feel anxiety or anxious, and for me, my eye will start twitching. Like, I get a little nervous tick. That means like my body is feeling stressed out. And I might not think that my body is stressed out, but my body is telling me that I'm stressed out. And I will literally drop everything and lay down. I will start to meditate, because I don't think that we should ignore things like that. Like your body is doing something outside of the norm. So what are you taking on that you might not be able to see, that you don't have the capacity to hold at this moment? And so I always try to find that place of peace and pay attention to my body. And if that means going away, that means like going and get my nails done or getting my hair done, or just taking moments away from life. For lack of better words, so that there is a serenity that I can surround myself with. And sometimes that's going with your girlfriends and just really, chatting it up, feeling like you can be candid and open with someone that you can't really talk about certain things, with your husband, or you just want to have some girl time. So I applaud you for making that a part of your platform, because we need to be mindful of how important that is, because we can be on the grind and the hustle so much. And the way that social media really paints this influence in numbers. And so we can find ourselves like I need to hit that. I need to, before you know it, you are burnt out and you don't even recognize that you are burnt out. And so I think that we take a step back and really try to walk in the full purpose that we're called, make sure that we're happy doing what it is that we love to do, not, striving for the numbers or to be known, to be known. There is something about that purpose that keeps you in peace. And if it's in peace, then provision comes. And then I just feel like right there, that's self-love, right? That when you can get into that place where it's all about you being happy and you're working still, peace. Peace is my self-love. Find your peace, girl. Go with God, find your peace.
Yeah. And self-love too is going to a parent and saying, hey, I have a dream. I'm headed to LA. You know what I'm saying? Right. If you can love yourself, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I always try that when I talk to people that had a goal and they went for it. You have to have a self-love to believe in yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like it goes ties in the faith, because we can believe in a higher power, but if we don't believe in ourselves, you know what I'm saying? If we don't love ourselves to say, hey, I can get on that stage with Kanye, I can talk to Dacia, you know what I'm saying? If we don't have that self-love to say, I'm just caution to the wind, have faith, and I'm going to see if this is going to work. I'm going to believe this is going to work. Even if it doesn't work out in the way that I think is going to work, it's still going to work out in my favor regardless.
Yeah. I think that's so good that you just said, you just pinned something. We probably can talk 2 hours, girl, but you just pinned something that I think that women in general, even for me, I was like, okay, you're right. That's self-love too. So for those that are on here that might be listening, that may be laying their dreams on the shelf. Maybe you had kids, or, you know, you've been married, or you're now divorced, or, you know, things didn't work out the way that you saw them. Man, I challenge y'all to find that love, that self-love. Challenge y'all to find that love, that self-love, and dream a bigger dream for yourself. So it's so good that you said that. I really want us to change the perception of self-love and add that in addition to taking care of ourselves, but no, like, you know, have enough love for yourself to dream that dream, but not only dream it, start walking in the steps to accomplish it, so that it does not become on the bedpan the shoulda, coulda, woulda, but things that we've strived to. And I guarantee it, when we start accommodating that with self-love, women gonna be taking over this world. That's so good. So good. Thank you for saying that. So good.
And girl, I can say it because I've been there, done that, everything that you just listed. So I can really say it.
Got it.
Been there, done that, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, it really is true, because I feel like, and see, this is why it's confirmation, because it all goes to what you said about the taboo subject of waiting. So let's say, just like you just mentioned, we have these timelines in our minds. You know, we have these goals set in our minds.
Expectations. Yeah.
Married age. I'm supposed to have X amount of children, a dog, and a picket fence by this age. You know, I'm supposed to hit my 10, my 20, my 30-year anniversary with this person that I may have met when I didn't even know myself. You know what I'm saying? But those timelines that we've created in our mind, it's just not reality for everybody. Hats off to people that, boom, hit those points. Cool for y'all. But, you know, for some of us,
but for everybody else.
Right. But for us, it just doesn't happen that way. And I feel like you said, it's okay. Put another dream on the shelf. You know, if that dream was, hey, I wanted this family, because I had a stage in my life, my only goal was to have like what I thought was supposed to be like the Cosbys. I was supposed to have that husband and the 3 children, and that's it. You know, I was supposed to stay at home mom, and that's the only thing I had in my mind. And dreams that I did have, they were put on the shelf. But in my mind at the time, that was okay, because I was conditioned that that's what I was supposed to do. Yeah. So many have those same stories. There's so many women, and it's a shame that fertility is a taboo subject, because so many people deal with that. And there's another side of infertility for women who have had a child, because I've had miscarriages after having children, and that's like another category where sometimes people sit down. I know when I was in situations like, well, you already have kids. It's like, doesn't mean that wasn't a traumatic experience having a miscarriage, you know. So, you know, there's so many things. So just going back to, we have these things in our mind, you know, we have these timelines, but when they don't work out, sometimes it's so easy to just, like you said, wallow in the pain, don't even focus on the next dream or the next chapter in our life. I tell people all the time, I count everything all joy. No matter what has happened, is all joy. I had a good friend of mine, new friend, called me Sunday because a business situation didn't work out. I said, oh, count it all joy. It was meant for you to find out that this person was not going to work with you today, as opposed to a month or 2 from now. I said, so count it all joy. I said, you got a warning ahead of time.
Yeah.
You have to count it all joy. If you don't, these life situations that come at us will literally kill us mentally, physically, you know. So I'm always being on top of it. It's a part of your purpose. You have to turn that pain into purpose. And I'm not diminishing what it takes to go through those things. Yeah, definitely own your pain. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to even be like, why me? But long as you don't stay in it, whatever it takes for you to get out of that why me mindset, that will definitely help you get through that waiting period with some true grace. So
look, you better preach, okay? because you just summed up my good old whole book. Okay. Yeah. And finding that joy will sustain you, right?
Yeah.
I think that we're not susceptible to trials or, messiness, but our mess is our message, right? Our tests are our testimonies. And although while we are actually going through it, it might not feel good, but it will work out for our good. So I think that if we can find the joy in it, I love this verse in Lamentations 3 when Jeremiah is really lamenting on, his feelings and the sufferings and things. Like when I say he is going ham on God, like that's what I call it. Like, yo, Jeremiah just went ham on God, like very candid. This is what you've done. I'm grieving to my core. How could you do this to me? And then all of a sudden he flips the script and he says, but then I remember your faithfulness, and I was like, man, that's what it is. It's literally remembering and staying in a place of joy, because if God has brought you through something, he will absolutely bring you through the next thing. Yes, you might have to wait. Yes, there might be a waiting season, but what sustains you is you remembering and recalling. He was like, yet I recall God's faithfulness, right? Recalling, going through those moments and how he's brought you through will sustain you for the journey to the next mountaintop. Like literally, let's not forget that there's a valley season between every mountain, right? There is a valley in between every mountain, and society has kind of trained us to stay at the top or feel like we're at the top. And so the middle gets uncomfortable, but there's growth in the middle, right? That wait will prepare us. And by having joy in it, it is us solidifying our faith. Like, nah, you got me in this, And so I love the way that you said that, because it is a perspective change. It's the way that we're looking at it, and we can always find joy in the most devastating situations. The fact that we can breathe that morning is something to be grateful about.
Yes, it makes you have to find a pain and a purpose. You have to find a purpose in that pain. If not, we be walking around like zombies, like you have to find the purpose in that pain. Like I feel like there's no other option. There's so many people that's walking around broken. They're finding negative ways to cope with pain, because, they're broken. They're trying to heal. They're trying to fill that void. They're trying to understand why things happen to them, but like I said, if you don't find that purpose in that situation, and like I said, it's not an overnight thing. So I definitely empathize when people are in that particular season of waiting, where they absolutely can't understand. I definitely empathize with them, because it's not an overnight process. Sometimes it takes years for people to get to that stage of, okay, I'm just going to pull up, my big girl panties and figure out how I'm going to get through this, because we all deserve to be happy. I don't care what you have been through. Everyone deserves to be happy. Everyone deserves to find that peace. So before we end everything, I normally do end the show asking, how do you define a queen? However, I've been trying to change that, and I want to ask different things. So with you, we've had an amazing conversation about waiting and just finding purpose and just finding that joy. So I want to ask you, like I said, this is a little different. So I want to ask you, how do you define winning while waiting? Because I want to do something different. I don't want to do a typical, how do you define a queen? I just rather ask something with more purpose, more meaning, more substance. So how do you define just winning while you're waiting?
Ooh, I might have to write that one down. That's a good one, girl. Winning while waiting. When you develop the strategy to wait well, you've already won. Because we are going to have seasons of waiting. They're inevitable for every single one of us. Okay. But in knowing the waiting well, like in knowing how to wait well, and the waiting well, I actually talk about this in the Connect 4 chapter of the devotional. And for me, what I have been sharing with people on how to wait well is prayer
and praise and perspective and perseverance, the 4 P's. To me, if you can master or even maintain those 4, then you've already won the battle, because you now have trained your mind to see victory before you actually see it with your eyes. In a spiritual sense, you're moving in victory. You're moving. It's like faith without works is dead. But if you can say, okay, I understand that prayer is important. Prayer is my weapon. Prayer is what moves God to action. Prayer is surrendering to a higher source. Rendering to a higher source, and then praise, thanksgiving. It says enter into his gates with thanksgiving. So thanksgiving tells him, oh, you trust me. Oh, you trust me to do it again. Boom. Okay, so here we are. Now we praying, and now we praising, and now perspective is very, very particular. For me, I had to change infertility. The IN is lowercase and fertility is all caps. Why? Because it's a negative connotation to the infertility. But I look at it as, no, I'm in a fertility journey. Like there's no negative aspect to this. No, I'm in on the lowercase level fertility. This is a journey, a specific journey that my husband and I are going through, and we're already conquerors. We already know, we've already seen the glimpse of our children. We just don't know the timeline. And releasing that timeline is surrendering to God. So we change our perspective of how we look at things. And then perseverance is a muscle. Like literally, faith takes work, right? We're not going to come from this interview and go out and run a marathon if we ain't trained for a marathon. It's not going to happen. It's just like you can't go and start body lifting and tomorrow think you're going to, lift up 300 pounds. No, your faith is built based upon the circumstances. When we go through things in life, God builds our faith. So there's some things that we no longer question, because God has already built up our faith in that area, but we compartmentalize it, right? The areas that we don't see God, or we don't think that we see God moving the way that we thought, we tend to have less faith in that area. So I think the perseverance part is just understanding that this is a journey for all of us, and we got to build up in our most holy faith, right? And I will say this last thing regarding the perseverance is I remember one of the family members of Dylan Roof after that massacre situation, and they said, how could you forgive him? You truly forgive him? And they said, forgiveness is something that I have to choose daily. It's not this thing that I just have because there's pain here, but I have to get up and choose to forgive every single day. I think that's what we have to do. We have to choose to have faith every single day. No matter what we see, we have to wake up and decide, I'm going to trust you today, right? And so I think that that's the winning, right? Prayer and praise and perseverance and perspective, because now we've changed our outlook on where we are, and that's waiting well.
Whew, girl. Yes to all of that. Yes, it's just like that sent chills down my spine, girl. But that's true. I mean, and I love that how you said you have to wake up every single day and choose to have that faith and say, I'm going to trust you. And that you're right. You have to wake up every day, and it all goes to mindset too. You have to wake up and have that mindset that I'm going to conquer this day. I'm getting closer to my dream, and I always tell people, always be in a state of ing. You have to wake up every day and say, I'm still growing. I'm still learning. I'm still evolving. You know what I'm saying? Because none of us are ever going to get to that plateau where we don't need to learn, where we don't need to grow, where we don't need to evolve. If we got to that stage, we wouldn't need, that higher power. We wouldn't need that faith. Yeah. So I do, I love what you said. So thank you so much for just blessing this platform. This has been an amazing conversation. So,
thank
you. Before, please tell everyone how they can contact you, where they can buy your book, which I plan to go to your website after this is over with and grab
thank you, sis.
Make sure you tell everybody how they can find you on social media, where they can get this book. Just tell them everything.
Right. No, first off, Sharonda, thank you
I appreciate it. This has been a great conversation. I love when it's just organic and we vibe, because I'm doing these on a daily basis, but it's so good to come in and be on one accord and on one mission to really dismantle the thoughts and the discouragement that we as women and queens tend to have and really thrive. So I appreciate you. May God continue to bless your platform, as well as you walk in obedience in this area. Again, my name is Dacia James Lewis. You guys can contact me on Instagram, Facebook. It's at Dacia James, whatever the actual Instagram platform is. And then my website is daciajames.com. You can buy the book where books are sold, preferably either my site or Amazon, as well as for all the queens out there. I do have my company, Women, Wives, Warriors. We do quarterly prayers where we cover women in their trajectory towards their vision for the year. So I would love to pray with you guys, with my warriors, and really stand in agreement for you guys. And we also offer free fitness classes on Saturday to kind of keep women in shape, that we kind of started during the pandemic, and it's just continued to go on.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So you guys heard it. This is Miss Dacia James, and please go get this book, The Game of Life. I haven't read it yet, but just from what we've talked about, I know there's a blessing in that book. So there's no doubt in my mind. But thank you again for everyone that is watching. Please make sure you support the podcast, and you can access this episode. It will be streaming on YouTube, and it will also have the audio version on all audio platforms. All you have to do is go to theqchat.com and you'll be able to access this episode and more. So guys, please make sure that you learn to love yourself, and also just understand, I know during the time of pain, you may be like, why me? But when you get to that healing, that peace, and if you learn to count it all joy, you will find that purpose in that pain, and you will be able to learn that you can win while you are waiting. I don't care what anyone says. I don't care what situation you are going through. I know for a fact, I may not have even met you, but I know you can win. You can get past anything. So just please take the gems that was preached in this episode and just apply it to your life. You can win, but definitely make sure you go get this book, The Game of Life, and I guarantee you'll learn how to win that game of life. So thank you guys for joining the Key Chat, and make sure you go love yourself.